Jersey School Board Association. This is Education Matters, where we try to bring education issues to our membership and those interested in public education. Today, I'm very pleased to have with us the Speaker of the Assembly, Craig Coughlin. Speaker Coughlin has been the Speaker for 6 years, and I found out the longest serving Speaker in New Jersey history. So welcome, Speaker. How are you?
Thank you very much. Yes, it's a great honor and wonderful privilege to be able to serve, and to be the longest serving is really something special.
I just want to go back to your early history. You did start as a school board member in South Amboy.
I did.
You did, and you also went to the council. And I actually believe your sister was also on the school board for a good number of years.
That's true. My sister was on far longer, and I got appointed to fill a vacancy when I got out of law school, and stayed there for a year and a half or so until I ran for and was elected to council and took office. My sister served for about 20 years and was the president for, I think, 15 of those 20 years, and was also on the county board as well. So
I actually met your sister. She was a good school board member.
Thank you. I think she was. I think she really was. No, she was terrific, actually. She cared very deeply, as most board members do. I think, that it is the toughest job that I've had in politics, right? Because it's so consequential, but also because it is so personal.
Yes.
To the parents and to everybody involved. Good parents want to make sure their kids get good educations, and they're, every family is a lobbying group, and they ought to be, right? They ought to be, because that's their job as parents, to make sure that their kid is getting the best ever education, because education equals opportunity. That's what we should be so proud of in New Jersey, is because we do have the best public education system in the country, and that means we give the best opportunities to our students. So, and I'm surrounded by them now. Dan Harris, my chief of staff, is the president of the Woodbridge Board of Education. Executive director Seth Hahn's wife is a member of the Highland Park Board of Education. So, the connection is still strong.
Good. So let's go into some of those issues. We'll get into school funding, the teacher shortage. I do want to start with something I know that's kind of close to your heart, and that's like school meals and the feeding of children. I know recently the legislature just acted on that. Do you want to expand on that and where you might?
Well, we did that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done to try to increase the number of students who receive free breakfast and lunch. I believe ultimately we should make it universal, so that every student has free breakfast and lunch for several reasons. First of all, we know study after study tells us that students perform their best when they are well fed, and they don't have to be worrying about food or they're eating. They're able to perform at their best, and they're more engaged, and all of the good things that go along with that. One of the challenges, though, is the stigma of taking free breakfast and lunch. And by making it universal, as a number of other states, including Minnesota, for example, have done, it gives everybody the opportunity. And so some students won't take it. We can find ways to do that. There's a teacher here at one of the elementary schools in Woodbridge who collects all of the unused food and distributes it out through the school community to families who are in need. I think that's a terrific idea. So making it universal is the ultimate goal. But by raising the income threshold, we were able to add 60,000 new students for being eligible over the past year. We passed that legislation, got that done, and we'll see the benefits of that coming up. One of the other things that we did is that we have broadened that even larger. There was, found a new way to enroll children. There were any number of children who were eligible but were never enrolled. They're eligible because of they're entitled to family leave. And for the folks out there who are the wonky ones, we're talking about the Medicaid Direct Certification Demonstration Program. We don't talk about that in those terms generally. We just talk about feeding kids. But the truth of the matter is, it works, and it added 97,000 additional students. So this is a huge gain, huge increase, right? To help students when they go back to school this year, and we're committed to. I'm committed to continuing to do that. We also had great success, as you know, and every board member knows, that you're concerned about the off times, weekends, holiday breaks, summer. This year, the federal government had a terrific program. It's called the EBT program that we really leaned into in New Jersey. It resulted in about 600,000 students taking advantage of that program. Program gave $120 for every student to be able to take it. It came in form of a debit card, and they would go use it at local supermarkets. So I think it was the total amount of revenue was $64 million. As a result of that program, got fed into the New Jersey economy, so it was good for for supermarket owners. But more importantly, it was important for kids. And Ray, to talk about the kind of commitment that we have in New Jersey, we really did lean in that program, made sure people were taking advantage of it. About 12 other states just refused to take the money, which is insulting and terrible leadership, in my humble opinion. So we're continuing to find ways to make sure we get to the goal, and making sure that students have their best opportunity by making sure that they have the food that they need to sustain themselves.
Yeah, we would agree. The school meals are very important. We don't want students being hungry, and there is a stigma in some communities to getting that free lunch. So I'm glad you're looking into that.
And that last federal program, just for the record, that we signed on to, which created the 97,000 additional members, it came at no cost to taxpayers, to state and local taxpayers.
All right.
So a huge development, which is music to every board member's ear, right?
And music to the legislature when it's not coming out of your coffers too.
100%.
So let's look at, we're recording this before Labor Day. The legislature is not in session. What are some of the things that you think will be moving in this fall session?
I think, look, first of all, we should look at where we're at, right? And where we're at is as having in the last budget that we just passed, last act that we've taken before we went into summer, was to provide the most educational funding in history of the state of New Jersey. That's where we start. About a third of our state budget, in fact, is dedicated to direct school aid, even more in indirect school aid, which includes property tax relief and other kind of help for citizens. So as a state, we've made it a huge priority, one that I wholeheartedly agree with, and one that has been enormously successful. We ought to be really, really proud of the investment we're making in education. As I said before, and I'll say it 1,000 times, we have the best public education system in the nation. Doesn't mean we can't get better. Doesn't mean there aren't areas where we need to improve. But overall, we're the best, and we're the best because we invest in it the most and we care about it the most. Not the most in pure dollars. Obviously, there are bigger states that invest more money, but as as a percentage of our budget, as a percentage of your property tax bill, huge investment in education, and it pays off because we're all better off when we have a better educated populace, and so that's no accident, right? A couple things that we do have to work on, and we've seen it manifest itself the last couple of years. Now we finally reached the full implementation of S2 for folks at home. That's the bill that redid the school funding formula. And in the last couple of years, we have seen sort of surprises occur for districts in the state. They think they're estimating what they're going to gain or lose from the last budget based on the projections, and then they get a surprise. Now it's never a bad surprise if you get more money, but on the other side of that, the one that really results in a lot of angst is not getting an additional cut more than you had anticipated. So we need to address that. And I think there's a few things that have come up and sort of manifest themselves. The transparency of how the formula is calculated. Although I think the formula that was calculated to follow the student. So there's that seems pretty direct there, but obviously it is a much more complex formula than just that. So we need to be more transparent about how, I think we need to be more transparent about how that formula is applied so that school districts can make informed decisions, so the board members know what they're talking about as they're headed into making a budget. The timing is also an issue, as you know. Getting your numbers from the state just very short time before you have to adopt the budget can be really challenging. It doesn't give you a time to make a plan. So I think we will have to look at that.
I just want to follow up on that a little bit because I think you're correct. I think they want to, when you plan a budget, you want to know how much money you're going to be receiving, and the surprises both ways are difficult. Before I came on this, there was a district from what we call them the S2 districts, that they've been receiving cuts for the last few years. Do you see do you see that they'll have any relief, or at least it'll be a much more consistent? Is that what? Because I believe the legislature is going to be starting to look at the formula to see if they can make it a little bit more reliable in terms of the funding, or at least.
Well, we are. Well, I mean, look, I think the commitment is pretty real and has been there. I think we'll always be looking at the formula, and I think it's time to do it statutorily too. But how that goes about being tweaked, and I saw the one question we're going to do about some of the districts that were those who lost. Somebody had, I saw it in the chat. That's a real challenge. We want to be able to support all of our schools, but the funding formula again was. It took away some of the protections. There were schools that were disproportionately adversely affected for decades, quite honestly. And so trying to make that more fair to them probably meant there is still as big amount as there is, and it's huge, there is still a finite amount of money. So we're going to have to work through those issues.
And that's you have to work with the governor's office, I guess.
Senate, I mean, everybody, we all have to come together on a formula or a formula change. So I think we're in the process of starting to look at. First, you have to define a problem before you correct it, right? And so, what's caused those losses in revenue to schools that have had theirs reduced by something larger than they anticipated? Well, I think one of the elements might be home values. I think that's one of the things that is an element of the formula, and how do we adjust for that? Because that goes to how much local property tax you collect, right? So there are any number of reasons, but first we have to define what it is, and I think we're going to have to start to do that work. As soon as we get back in the fall, we'll have to start to look at which is right around the corner, right?
Yep.
Like next week, we'll get back to work and we'll do that. Some of the other things I think that we're going to do, we've made a big investment in pre-K in the state. I think there's $110 million in this year's budget. Creates over 70,000 new seats. And we're going to continue to support those. And I think one of the things that has starting to get the attention that it deserves, and it has been, but I think increasingly we're going to look at supporting mental health, particularly pediatric mental health. Right, we have too many students who we have to worry about or who actually commit suicide, um, and we need to boost mental health for students so that it's not a challenge. Now, how much of that was pandemic related? I'm not really sure. I don't know if I have a statistic on that. We are getting further and further away from that back to normalcy, which is good, right? Obviously, it's great. It's where we want to be. But the problem is still real, and the notion of students committing suicide is something that is really hurtful to all of us. I think I don't know how you look at a student who has every one of them have bright futures, and then just things go off the rail, and that's something we need to address. We just can't let that go unattended.
And
So
I'll add to that, kind of like school meals, it helps student achievement too. If you help kids with their mental health, they can
oh,
they can achieve a little bit better academically as well.
if they're fighting through the challenges all by themselves, they can't possibly be the best students they can be, right?
Mhm.
And so they need and deserve our help, and I think we'll have to work to try to get to do that. We're also working with the DOE and local school boards for implementation on early education literacy laws that the Gov has signed. We want them to be added be added resources for the districts and not just mandates. We want them to be meaningful and impactful. Um, and start building some bridges with gaps in literacy. Most important thing, I guess, most of us do is learn to read. Um, and so we need to be able to be supported and put in place the things that we've already enacted. So I think making sure those things all happen are going to be on the top of the agenda list in the education world. There's other list of top of priorities. Things that are
Yeah,
going to happen.
one of them I wanted to bring to you, just get your thoughts on, is it's actually nationwide, but in New Jersey, we're having some issues with the teacher shortage and staff shortages all around, bus
Yeah.
drivers and other help. Um, and this is kind of a long-term, short-term problem that's been coming for years. The long-term problem is we don't have enough students who want to go into the field of education. The number of
Yeah.
students enrolling in the teacher prep programs in our colleges is dwindling. Is there anything the legislature is looking at or can do to help?
Well, we're trying. I mean, the education chair of the assembly, a woman named Pam Lamp, a terrific legislator, an experienced legislator, and she's led the charge to come up with some solutions on that. We've uh, prepared a pretty comprehensive package. There's a task force that's actively meeting to continue to come up with ways to help eliminate that. Some of them maybe making the evaluation processes more streamlined because we recognize the need to cut back on paperwork. It really is, if you talk to teachers, um, there can be redundancies in that evaluation process, and even perhaps a little excessive amount. So streamlining those things, I think, might be a good idea. Um, Reducing the barriers to entry, reducing unnecessary tests and burdensome expenses. We're looking to do that, such as the basic skills test. Uh, One of the things that we do, and which ought to attract young teachers, is to let them know that their pension plan, which is a good pension plan, solid pension plan, will be in place. Right, we've fully funded that now, and people should be able to be confident in that. I guess when you're 21, you're not necessarily thinking about your pension plan, but it is a good thing. And as you get a little older, it becomes more and more important to you. I think one of the things that package included was to reduce the number of credits for substitute teachers. Having substitute teachers is also a challenge now for school districts. And so reducing that number of credits we think may happen. And we've also done a tax credit for teachers who spend their own money on supplies for students. We know that that happens all the time, right? Teachers are routinely very generous, making sure that their classes have everything that they need to succeed. And we're going to give them a tax credit now for the money that they spend on that. So we're going to continue to look at the situation in totality. We're looking at those things that we have, the things that we just done. We've gone forward with to try to eliminate that, or alleviate it, and we're going to continue to work at it.
And I think it's also a problem now that not just at the legislatures lap. It's going to take everyone. It's going to take the school boards. It's going to take the administrators. It's going to take the teachers. It's going to take higher education as well to kind of work together on that issue.
Yeah, and I'd like to know why the numbers went down. I've been in the legislature now for, this is my 15th year, and would routinely get stack of requests for recommendations and stuff like that. That has gone down. So I don't know why, what has made it less attractive. I don't know if it was the pandemic. I don't know if
it's been happening for a little bit longer than the pandemic. It's been coming, but I think the pandemic kind of really exasperated, didn't it? Well, it didn't help too many things. So
yeah, no,
but
not a lot.
It's been for a long time. And probably there will be a study on that. I know the governor had a task force on that. I just got two other questions that came in. One of them, the person who called me said, is there going to be any movement? What are your views on schools looking at consolidation in some of the smaller school districts?
Well, I think that's something that we should look to the districts themselves to make decisions about whether they're gonna look at consolidation. In some instances, it makes sense probably, and in others, it doesn't. New Jersey, we're a pretty parochial state when it comes to our school districts. We are very proud of them. Little school, and we're the Fighting Lions or something, and we've been that way forever. In the past couple of years, we've funded money to do studies to do that, and I don't know that has resulted in many consolidations. They can be tricky. They can take a while, but may be a solution for some. So, not opposed to the notion, but I want to make sure we get that right. And I think part of that is really the involvement of the local board.
Okay. One kind of last question. Someone asked a question about English language learning and funding in that. I believe that is part of the school funding formula. You get extra funding for students in need, but New Jersey is a pretty diverse state. So those type of funding helps tremendously because we're one of the most diverse states in the nation.
We are, and I think that's one of our real strengths is our diversity. But you're talking about having money for additional languages.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we have a duty to make sure that the children that we're entrusted with to educate get the education they need. And so investing in ways to make sure that we're communicating with them. We be the powers that get to decide where the money goes, and the boards who get to make those decisions and things like that. Giving them the resources is important. So we should constantly look at whether we're doing that well.
Okay. One final question. As for our board members and administrators, anyone who's listening, if they want to communicate with their legislature or on education issues, what's the best way to go about doing that?
Reach out. I mean, our numbers are all available. I would reach out to the local district office. I'll give you mine. It's 732-855-7441. Now I represent Woodbridge, Sayreville, South Amway, Perth Amway, Carteret.
Middlesex County, for those who don't know where those.
Well, yeah, Middlesex County, a portion of Middlesex County. I would suggest you call your local legislator, and you can find them online. You can find their numbers online, and try to get engaged with them. I mean, that's the come to hearings. I mean, it's about being involved and being engaged. But reaching out to them, asking to have a meeting, sitting down with your legislator, letting them understand the challenges they face. We legislate across the board. So I'm talking about education now. I was talking about higher education before, tax incentive plans earlier. We could be talking about fertilizer tomorrow. So the way to advance your agenda is to make sure that the legislator understands the challenge that it's posing, and then you can help to work together to find a solution.
Okay. I'd like to thank you for joining. And first of all, you said it in the beginning, but I want to reiterate it because you kind of stole my line. New Jersey's education is the best, and part of that I think is the partnership that we put the most resources into education than
Yes.
most states. Not just
It's
at
not-
the state level, the local level. People generally support their local boards of school budgets. They've done that historically. So I think New Jerseyans put a high price. They really high priority on public education.
Kudos to the people of New Jersey, right? We recognize how important that is.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank you for joining us and
Thanks
talk
for
to
having
some
me.
of our members. And I know the number you put on there, and he is correct. His chief of staff is a school board member, so he will have a little feel for what you're doing. And
He does.
so thank you, Speaker. And
All right. Thank you for having me. Thanks,
enjoy your
everybody. Have
holiday
a
weekend too.
great Labor Day weekend and back to school. Back to school is always in our house. My kids are now men. I have 3 sons. They're all men now. But New Year's Day was just a day. The real New Year started when we went back to school, because that's when everything got cycled through and we start all over again. So have a great start to the school year, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Speaker.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it.
Okay. That brings us to the end of this program. I hope you enjoyed listening to the Speaker of the New Jersey Assembly about some of the education issues.